started that first visitation was a real time of checking and double checking and comparing the way church was done in the first century and the way that church is done today all over the world. There's a big difference.
Well, briefly, what did you find?
Well, so many different things. One of the first things that I noted was that every single book in the New Testament, from Matthew to Revelation, was written to people in living rooms. There were no big buildings at the time or anything like that. Secondly, not a single letter in the New Testament was written to leaders. In other words, it doesn't start and say to the elders and everything. The word pastor, the idea of the pastor being the head, came about 300 and some years later. It was jointly governed by the people. I discovered that when I was reading some of the problems, look, for instance, in the 1 Corinthians letter, there was a situation with incest. And Paul said, you should have handled it. He didn't say, get the pastor, get the elders. He said, you should have handled it. In the very next chapter, two brothers are suing one another. And he says the same thing. Instead of get the leaders or anything, he says, you should have handled it. Why don't you guys pick two of the least in the church and let them decide the issue?
As a matter of fact, you talk about the whole paradigm of church was Constantine.
That's right. In 313 A.D., I believe it was, he issued what's called the Edict of Milan, which legalized Christianity, which brought Christians out of the homes that they'd been in for, more than 2 centuries, and actually gave them a bunch of money, took over pagan temples, and set up the auditorium-style church that we have today. Now, I'm not against the church by any means. God will fill whatever structure, that man gives him.
Of course.
But the very first structure that God gave him was the family.
Okay.